Hey guys, welcome to the Liberal Hive Mind, a channel solely focused on exposing the abundant hypocrisy of the left. You know, a couple months ago, a viewer on Twitter accused me of selectively covering anti-white racism and ignoring all other forms. And I was a little bit confused by the accusation, mainly because it's not like I do it on purpose. You know, I'm not just sitting here only looking for specific types of racism that go in one direction so I can build a narrative like the media does. No, I'm willing to cover it all. But there's only one problem. I don't see racism in the other direction. What's the latest great example? Juicy Smollett? I'd love to cover it, but the problem is this white boogeyman racist threat that the left is always warning us about exists in like remote corners of Alabama. A group of guys who live in the forest who don't like particular groups of people. Not exactly the most pertinent story. But in the other case, when we're talking about anti-white racism, not only is it rampant, but it's socially acceptable, it's taught in schools, and it's implemented on a wide systemic scale. The left goes on and on about systemic racism and racist highways, but the only systemic racism that I see are DEI programs meant to take opportunities away from white people. Look, I've been searching far and wide to try to make my coverage as balanced as possible, but it's simply impossible because it really only seems to be happening on one side and towards one group of people or in one direction. And I'm going to help make that point with a little segment here from MSNBC, which I think is going to be quite self-explanatory. Let me show you guys exactly what's going on. We got some stuff to get into, so let's roll the tape. All right, folks, so I guess probably the way that I should start off this video, or I should introduce this video, is by saying this. Imagine, if you will, the clip that I'm about to show you, but replace the word white with the word black. Could you imagine the outrage and outcry?
Joining us now, Professor of Political Science at the University of Maryland, Baltimore County, Tom Schaller, and journalist and opinion writer Paul Waldman. Their new book, out tomorrow, is entitled White Rural Rage, the Threat to American Democracy. And Tom, we'll start with you. Why are white rural voters a threat to democracy at this point? You would think, as we pointed out, looking at Joe Biden's background and Donald Trump's, that the opposite would be true.
I mean, we lay out the fourfold interconnected threat that white rural voters pose to the country. First of all, and we show 30 polls and national studies to demonstrate this, so we provide the receipts in Chapter 6. They're the most racist, xenophobic, anti-immigrant, and anti-gay geodemographic group in the country. Second, they're the most conspiracist group. QAnon support and subscribers, election denialism, COVID denialism and scientific skepticism, Obama birtherism. Third, anti-democratic sentiments. They don't believe in an independent press, free speech. They're most likely to say the president should be able to act unilaterally without any checks from Congress or the courts or the bureaucracy. They're also the most strongly white nationalist and white Christian nationalists. And fourth, they are most likely to excuse or justify violence as an acceptable alternative to peaceful public discourse.
So you mentioned a lot of negative factors about this demographic.
Yep, as I stated, unabashed racism on MSNBC with little to no worry and, of course, no pushback at all. MSNBC now promoting the idea that white rural people are a threat to democracy. Imagine if that title called to any other group of people. Just imagine it. Imagine the look on Joy Reid's face. The left is always espousing its virtue. We are the virtuous left. Always, constantly virtue signaling. But they prove time and time again that they aren't virtuous. Far from it. They're the worst characters operating in the realm of public discussion. Vile, hateful, vindictive people. This constant, awful demonization. We're talking about normal, regular, rural folk. People who just live in a different part of the country and have a different perspective. Large majority good people who wake up every single day and work hard to provide for their families and be productive members of their community. You know who these people are. You've been to Trump rallies. You might be a rural Trump supporter yourself who happens to be white. Just a regular person who has certain beliefs and wants to see President Trump enact policies they agree with. But according to them, you're an evil, rural threat to democracy and to the nation. You're irredeemable, deplorable, but not just rural people. No, specifically white rural people. I mean, how completely and utterly disgusting is that? That's what's being platformed in the mainstream media on MSNBC for everybody to absorb. You know how the left is always saying, don't platform hate. Elon Musk is platforming hate. Donald Trump is platforming hate. No, that's platforming hate. What you just saw right there is platforming hate. But it's not just hate, it's a divisive tactic. Typical divide and conquer strategy. You know, these leftists call themselves progressive, but everything they do seems to have one aim in mind, one goal in mind, and that's to increase racial animus. Their goal is to inject hate into the American mainstream. That's what Joe Biden was saying when he said that white MAGA supporters are the greatest threat to the homeland.
Too much of what's happening in our country today is not normal. Donald Trump and the MAGA Republicans represent an extremism that threatens the very foundations of our republic. But there's no question that the Republican Party today is dominated, driven, and intimidated by Donald Trump and the MAGA Republicans. And that is a threat to this country.
That's what Joe Biden was talking about. That's the message he was pushing when he referred to Trump supporters as the evil ultra-MAGA crowd. That's what Hillary Clinton meant when she referred to Trump supporters as an irredeemable basket of deplorables.
You could put half of Trump supporters into what I call the basket of deplorables. Right? The racist, sexist, homophobic, xenophobic, Islamophobic, you name it. And unfortunately, there are people like that. And he has lifted them up.
It is hate, hatred, angry, ugly, division, meant to pit Americans against each other. They want you to hate your neighbor because they might think differently. They want you to be scared of people who think differently, and especially scared of people who think differently and also happen to be white. It's hateful, divisive propaganda, and of course, it's mainstreamed racism for everybody to see, for everybody to absorb live on air on a near nightly basis at MSNBC. That's how I see it, and it's one of the most despicable trends. It's mainstream, it's everywhere, you see it, it's implemented in policies, discriminatory DEI programs, and just general anti-white sentiment. That is the modern form of racism and hatred. That is what I see, so that's what I cover. And anybody who has an issue with me, who claims that I only cover one side on this particular issue, please educate me. I am fully willing to change my perspective. Please show me mainstream, systemically institutionalized racism or class hatred, race hatred being pushed and promoted on a mainstream level, targeting minority groups and coming from the ultra-right extreme MAGA crowd. Find it, show it to me, please. Not gonna happen because it simply doesn't exist. I'm sure some leftists will point to some 4chan post or some Twitter video of an unidentified single man who did one thing. It's not the same thing, it's a false equivalency, it's a distraction. The real racism doesn't swing in the way that you think it might, and it's pretty easy to find because it's not exactly hiding. Anyways, that's what I got for you guys. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure to leave a like and possibly subscribe. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.